You have roof damage and then find out you need a new roof, so you file a claim, and then you and the roofer go back and forth with the insurance company for years. I'm not kidding, for years. Welcome to Behind the Investigation. I'm Better Call Harry with Anastasia Olmos, my desk mate. Hi, Anastasia.
Your favorite teammate on Atlanta News First Investigates.
Well, you listen to me complain all day long, so now I get to stand here and make up for it by praising you for your good work on this story, because I'm the consumer guy too, so I learned something about this story, and I want you to tell us about it, because the poor guy filed a claim, and then what? It took 3 years?
So that's the thing. It took years negotiating with the insurance company, which honestly, it happens. You go back and forth, and then, he brought in a public adjuster, and that's somebody that kind of advocates for you on more of a legal side with that backing, and it got approved. That's the story here, is that it was approved for a full roof replacement, which typically comes in 2 checks if you have that type of coverage, but that second check never came. And that's when the roofer contacted us and said, I've never seen this. And so we looked into it. A roofer can place a lien on a house if the homeowner doesn't pay for all of the work. But in this case, the roofer says he can't stomach holding the homeowner accountable for more than 10 grand that the insurance company said they'd pay.
It's not the homeowner's fault that this is taking place.
Atlanta News First Investigates first met roofer David Garner back in January.
It was torn all to pieces. There was, I think, over 70 shingles that were wind creased or missing.
Stuck between ridge-capped shingles and a hard place.
I've never had an insurance company supply an estimate with recoverable depreciation listed on the estimate and then refuse to pay. Never.
He was out of pocket near $12,000 on a roof replacement for Cumming homeowner Venkat Garkapati.
They are never shy on collecting the monthly premium and all, but to get this approved, it took quite a long time.
Venkat first submitted a claim for a wind damage roof in March 2021. State Farm approved the replacement of 38 shingles, which was less than his deductible and therefore no payout. He then found Garner, who spent more than 2 years with a public adjuster trying to prove to the insurance company that the roof required a full replacement, a cost closer to $30,000.
We ran into the situation of the typical deny and delay that insurance companies do sometimes. And then they finally approved the claim.
The approval estimate came on April 25th, 2024, 3 years after the initial claim. With a roof replacement claim, an insurance company approves an initial actual cash value amount. Anything in addition to that would be recoverable depreciation, which isn't always included in your coverage. But Garner made sure it was in Venkat's.
They gave specific instructions in the letter that came with the estimate.
The approval email from a State Farm agent stated that replacement cost benefits will be issued contingent completed of roof replacement and submission of photos, certificate of completion, and/or signed contract with service provider. But when Garner submitted the proof for replacement costs near $12,000, State Farm then said in an email that they weren't able to issue any benefits costs due to the contract's statute of limitations, which is 2 years of filing.
What am I supposed to do? I've already built the roof. I paid for the material. I paid for the labor. Everything's done. And it's not only that I'm not going to make anything on the transaction, I've got money sitting on his roof.
The homeowner's policy does state in the fine print that the work has to be done within 2 years of the date of loss.
It is extremely frustrating.
Looking for help, Venkat filed a complaint with the Georgia Insurance Commissioner's office. The office closed the complaint, citing State Farm's response that the roof replacement was outside of the 2-year window.
The whole reason this claim took a long time to get approved is because deny and delay on the insurance part.
A spokesperson for State Farm told Atlanta News First Investigates that they provided every benefit available to the homeowner within his policy. They doubled down on that statement to the insurance commissioner when Venkat filed a second complaint.
They're just giving a blanket statement.
The commissioner's office told us that State Farm is sticking to their decision, so they're closing the second complaint as well.
You would think the insurance commission would take them to task on that, but apparently they're not.
Atlanta News First Investigates looked at the last few years of homeowners insurance complaints filed with the Georgia Commissioner's Office and found State Farm had almost 900 complaints last year. That's up 126% from 2022. Allstate had 770 complaints and Progressive 557. The Insurance Commissioner's Office did not provide information on the outcomes of the complaints.
Okay, so this roofer is a heck of a guy because I don't know of too many businesses who would eat it on this one. And he's eating the loss. And I guess what I don't understand is if the insurance company took 3 years and went past its own deadline, how are they able to do that? And how did this not go anywhere with the insurance commissioner's office?
You know, that's the exact takeaway from this story is we're just kind of wondering where the accountability is. You know, for Better Call Harry, you're able to get a solution usually in a day or two, kind of these stories about water bills or, gas leaks, things like that. But when it's such a big company. I mean, State Farm is the biggest insurer in the United States, especially here in Georgia. And so, this conversation took months. And then I was talking with the insurance commissioner and I said, hey, will you tell me about this complaint that the homeowner just filed? And I mean, that took about 6 months of going back and forth, as I mentioned, 2 claims. And so really in the end here, it was a little frustrating that we couldn't get that answer for him of why did State Farm approve this roof at a full roof replacement after the deadline of that limit that is in the policy and then say it's outside of the limit, because that the roofer claims was misleading for him. He would not have done the work if he knew that that second check wasn't coming, because he says he would have had the conversation with the homeowner that you will be on the hook for more than 10 grand if I do this roof. And the homeowner doesn't even really understand that that's what the policy said itself, and that's the takeaway here.
And I think we need to prove, I'm going to throw this in there, that there's no indication or proof that State Farm did anything wrong. According to their policy,
Correct.
this is what the policy is. They could come back and say, well, why did the roofer take so long? And the roofer saying, well, because you guys took so long. It sounds like on a story like this, the takeaway for the homeowner might be, if you end up in this situation, it might be a civil suit, but then you have to pay an attorney and there goes 20 grand.
And well, the roofer, the outcome here, he said he's not going to take State Farm to court because he doesn't have that kind of money. He is a local roofer based out of Alpharetta. He's been doing this roofing for about a decade and he's had his own business for a couple years. And so he's really just working off of each job. And so he doesn't have really the bank account to even file a type of lawsuit to try to, hash this out in court. And so when it comes to the insurance commissioner's office, he was hoping that the insurance commissioner could get an answer there. But in talking with the commissioner, on past stories, he says, you can't make a company do anything. It's not a state agency.
Right.
But what they do is they hold them accountable. So they can sanction, fines, types of things and orders and things like that. But even the commissioner has said himself that he wants greater fines for insurance companies to hold them accountable. And this is nothing in regards to this story, but just in the future of what the insurance commissioner's office wants to be able to do. But at the end of the day, I mean, you are in a policy with your homeowner's insurance.
Right.
And you want them to be there for you at the end of the day. And so, that accountability there for this homeowner, he feels that it wasn't there. So he did end up leaving State Farm and going with a different company.
He did. And, and I guess it's worth asking if something goes on this long, if you're at 2 years, you wouldn't think to, once the insurance company back and they've approved the claim to say, hey, but what about this other amount? Since, was there a time limit or not,
And
hindsight's 2020 on this one is what I'm saying is you really, for anybody else, they need to ask their insurer up front, what's covered, what's not, are there any time limitations? And then
in all of the writing, it is there. It says we will pay out this extra replacement cost value once the proof is submitted. And Garner showed me all the photos in the submission. He even sent me why he had to spend those extra costs because of the certain type of shingle, and that manufacturer, no longer making that product. And so he has to get this new product. And in order to, do this certain shingle, you've got to have this with it. And so those costs really do add up, especially with inflation now, which are costs that he's also taking on in past years. He says he's seen 8 to 10 price increases on different supplies every single year since the pandemic and all of the supply issues. So, really, this is just a story about a roofer here who is doing the best he can to provide for his community. He came to Atlanta News First asking, what is this and what do I do about it? And so really what we want the viewer to take away here is that know your policy, regardless of what your insurance company tells you, because at the end of the day, this really is a question of why'd they say it and then not do it, but it doesn't matter because it's in the policy.
right, and that's the other thing too. If an agent over the phone, and we're not saying this is, we're just generalizing here, but if an insurance agent gives you information over the phone that could be the wrong information, it's all going to go back to the policy.
Whatever you signed, make sure you know what is in it.
Yeah.
That is, one of our key takeaways here at our investigative unit when we get these calls and these emails. It's you got to know what you signed, what's in the contract, what's in the policy, read the fine print. Nothing else matters.
Anastasia, excellent work as always. That's why we're desk mates, so that I can listen to you and then steal your information for my story.
Yeah, very ethical.
And for those of you watching, thanks, because we're very interesting, especially Anastasia, but
We're here for you.
definitely
We're here for
more interesting. But listen, you can also reach us if you have a problem. You can email us. You can email Anastasia. You can email. What's the email address? Atlanta News First Investigates. Tim, what is it?
I'd just go to the website and submit a tip.
We're going to put it on screen since I can't remember and but thank you again for watching, and you can listen to this podcast or you can watch this podcast wherever you get your podcasts because it is out there. Thank you so much. Better Call Harry, and goodbye.